And welcome to VADA Live. I'm your host, Dan Carrigan. So this segment's part of a special series on AI in the dealership space. Things like where it's headed, what it really means for the people doing the work, and how forward-thinking leaders are beginning to use it. So speaking of that, joining me is Michael Wood, General Manager of Checkered. And Michael, I understand your team is paying attention to and perhaps implementing AI. Michael, welcome to VADA Live.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So if you're okay, let's start with the basics here. So when someone says AI in a dealership, what does that actually mean to you?
You know, nowadays, I think it has a lot of meanings, and I think it gets kind of conflated. You know, there's basic AI that you might have in your CRM. You know, for instance, DriveCentric has an AI function that will take words that you give and will rewrite it for you. You know, that's kind of like a basic function of AI. Where we really should be at is much more forward thinking into the prompting sections of utilizing AI and its, large set of data that it has. But to me, you know, when somebody says using AI in their dealership, I have a lot of questions like, all right, which department are you using it in? What function are you using? How is it working for you? What's worked well? What hasn't worked? What happened unexpectedly, which I'm sure we'll dive into all that stuff. But, you know, that's where I'm at with it, because I think we're all really just students at this point, and we have to understand that the AI that we're using today is the dumbest AI you will use. It's only going to continue to get better and better and better. And whether we're on an exponential curve of that or a linear curve is to be seen.
So a lot of hype out there, of course. How do you separate the tools that actually use AI in a meaningful way?
Yeah, you know, I look to see a tool that's specialized. You know, anybody that's advertising an AI tool that says that they can help your dealership, then I think they're lying. Anybody that says, hey, I've got a tool that can specifically do X, Y, and Z, and then can show you through you testing it and trying it out on your own, I give that a little bit more. And that's the process that we're currently going through. You know, we're taking the demos, and then after we take the demos, we're reaching out to dealerships that have actually use the product for some sort of time to understand how it has, affected them, how it's changed their processes, good, bad, worse, whatever.
How does that really help when you have just that connectivity? You're using it. I mean, how does that kind of dealership and AI, that's definitely something different. Talking to other folks, is that massively helpful from your side?
Oh, for sure. No question about it, because it's so new. So it's not like there's like articles I can go pull up online to read about it, to understand. You know, there's no past history to build upon except for other change agents that have occurred in technology, whether it was the internet or, the computer or whatever it was, online buying. You know, those different change agents didn't really have any kind of footprints to follow, except for the fact of when a change agent happens, what typically happens to business. And typically it disrupts in it, and you either lean in and you can grow with it, or you get left behind. So I'm just taking the mindset of this is going to be a change agent of the nth degree, something we've never seen before in our lives. And I'm not going to get left behind. So I'm going to be a student. I'm going to learn. I'm going to figure out which ones are going to work best for my departments so that I can streamline my business, maximize my lifetime value of every consumer while reducing my customer acquisition costs, thus increasing the value of the dealership for my dealer principal. But all of that is going to be under the idea of how can I use the AI to better my customer experience as well. And so that's where I'm initially looking. What AI tools can we adapt that can not replace humans, but replace the meaningless tasks that humans have to do that take them away from enjoying their job? Because when you're not enjoying your job, you're not going to deliver a good experience to the client. So I'm looking, what can I do? Like, what AI agents can I add in that can take away meaningless tasks? And meaningless tasks, I could mean follow-up. And I know somebody's like, follow-up is not meaningless. You're right. But 21-day follow-up and 30-day follow-up that we know does not occur falls into a meaningless task bucket. And if I can hire an agent that can do all of that follow-up 24/7 for my associates, man, that's going to be I'm going to sell more cars that way. And then conversely, if I have an agent that can answer every phone call, every text message, every email 24/7 with a positive response that's built on a large language model that's adapted around trying to make my client happy. Oh, and all the while learning it over time so they can remember that, oh, Mr. Carrigan, you're twins. Oh, great. How are they doing? Giving that personal touch that we wish every person would do. The AI will always do that. And I don't know if you have twins or not. I was just using that as an example.
No twins. That would have been an amazing coincidence. But I'd appreciate that insight, Michael. To help other dealers out there, what was that initial push at its core that really got you to start exploring AI in the first place? And after that, what were the discussions like inside Checkered Flag?
Well, so I surround myself with a lot of the crew from Asodu, and because I think that they're part of the forward thinking, a little bit younger generation of the dealership leadership out there. And a lot of them have been talking a lot about AI. And I'm like, well, I'm not in this conversation, so I'm missing out on something. So I decided, I was like, all right, I'm going to start learning. So I started to grab a couple books. One of them I read was Ethan Mollick's Co-Intelligence. Best book I've read about AI right now, and I highly recommend it to anybody out there. If you don't understand AI and you want to have a better working knowledge of it, pick up the book, read the book. It'll definitely put you in the right direction, and it'll also make you realize you got to get on board.
More examples are always welcome on VADA Live. Any others you using AI in the real world? Any areas that has helped or you're looking forward to? Can you take us inside the dealership a little bit?
Yeah, no doubt. Some basic stuff would be, asking it a question and getting a response out of it. So let's talk about VDPs, for instance. The description that's on a VDP, in my opinion, is very important. It's supposed to give a great story to the client, keep them on the page, get them scrolling through the pictures, point out features of the vehicle. And there's ways to automate it now with, if you're using VADA, you can click off some of the stars and it'll generate a very basic old school version of the AI, if you will. And then there's people that'll take ChatGPT and they'll put in the VIN and say, write me a vehicle description page or, vehicle description for this vehicle. And it'll give you back a response. But where we need to be talking about is like the prompting of it. So if you give it that one prompt and just say, write a description for this vehicle, it's going to give you a description of this vehicle. But if you say, you are a marketing manager for a large automotive group whose sole job is to create compelling descriptions of automotives for vehicles to be sold on a website. We want to make sure that we include the top 5 unique items of that vehicle, use descriptive language that entices the reader to stay in. I want you to create 5 of these descriptions and then compare and contrast them against each other and pick the best one that you think would be for the page and present it to me with the reason why. That's a much more in-depth response that you're going to get from the AI, and that's what AI is capable of now. And so that's when I talk about prompting, is that it shouldn't be used like a Google search function, although it can be. If you're using it for that, you're missing out on a lot of the functionality of AI because it's not going to know what to do and from what frame and from what lens it should be operating. So that's just one rich, kind of example of how you can, if you're using AI as a search tool in that example, and then if you want to take it to the next level and really get a great response out of it. And each time you do it, it's going to give you a different response. That's the cool thing about it.
Is there anything that surprised you so far?
I think what really surprised me was the understanding that it's not always right. So I think in the industry, they call it hallucinations. The sole intent of a large language model is for it to appease the end user. And so if it doesn't have enough data to pull from, the tokens that it pulls from, then it's going to potentially hallucinate a response back that is not real. And so understanding that AI as we know it right now is not artificial general intelligence, it's a large language model, then we have to understand that it has limitations and that if you have less prompting, getting back to the prompting, if you have less prompting, then you have a higher likelihood of hallucinations in the responses.
Appreciate that insight. And as far as talking with the team about AI, how have you done so? And are there any concerns that you've heard and how are you addressing them?
I really think that's one of the biggest issues to adoption across the board is that, team members think that AI is going to replace them. And I think if you go from a completely different approach and you let your staff know, like, I'm not looking to replace you. I'm looking to enhance you. I want to create cyborgs. I want to create people that have the best tools. So it's not technology versus people. It's people with better technology. And at the end, I think that the dealership wins, the customer experience wins. So I'm telling my staff, like, hey, listen, within the limitations that we have, use AI. And when you come up with something that's unique or you think you have something that's different, bring it to my attention. I want to know about it. And have we adopted a lot yet? No, there's a couple of users that are using it for sure. And I think more and more will. But the reality is that there are more people in my dealership that are using it than I know. And they call that shadow usage because they are fearful of the fact that they will lose their job. And that, again, is where it's my job as a leader to make sure they understand that's not my intent. Help me make the business better. That makes you more valuable.
And you mentioned areas where this is already helping, specifically marketing. As you look forward, any others, F&I, fixed ops, where do you think it's showing additional promise at this point?
Oh, I don't think there's a department within the dealership that it won't touch in advance. Whether it's from parts fulfillment rates and analyzing your turn rate of your parts to maximize that, whether it's servicing, using an AI agent for chat or response or follow-up, et cetera, based on the repair orders, placed in your DMS. I mean, I really think that over the next year or two, we're going to see some exponential growth in the capacity of what AI can actually do. And we're going to see it really help the dealership streamline some things, maximize profitability in certain areas, but more importantly, allow the humans to do the most important part of the human aspect, which is, the interaction, the making the customer feel better when they're there at the dealership. And then, it'll be interesting to see how everything's just going to grow from there, in my opinion.
What, in your opinion, is a small, perhaps manageable way you think other dealership leaders could start exploring AI, even if they are skeptical at this point?
Download ChatGPT, pay the $19.99 a month to get the pro version of it, and just play with it. That's the first step. If you don't understand it, then, if you don't understand what it can do, then you can't even think about what it can do for your business. So play with it, utilize it instead of Google, but then as you're doing it, ask it questions. And the most important thing, and in my opinion, is to treat it as if it's like a person. Give it almost its own identity every time that you're talking to it, and make sure that the identity that you're talking to is the one that you want. So if you're asking for medical information, make sure that the identity you're giving it is that it's a leading scholar at Harvard Medical School, to make sure that it's prompting itself with the right tokens and looking through the correct lens. You'll get the best response that way. And as you play with it and see it functioning, then you'll see like, oh, aha, it can work this way in my dealership, it can work this way in my dealership. And you'll find opportunities to, better the customer experience. In the end, I think that's what it will do.
And what do you think a year or two down the line will really separate dealerships that either successfully leverage it or those that fall behind? So almost going beyond the, okay, I'm here, I'm using it, but I may not be using it effectively. What do you think that differentiator may be?
I think that there's potential for definitely to be differences in where the dealerships are. Like, the early adopters are going to have the advantage. The only advantage that the late stage people might have is allowing the top providers to rise to the top. Because as you pick a provider, it's really important to make sure you pick the right one. Because when you leave that provider, the unique data that AI agent has picked up, for instance, how many children you have, how many cars you have within the checkered flag family, all that unique data is going to stay with that agent. So if you decide to leave that platform and go to a new platform, you're not going to get it anymore. Now, the CDP stuff lives within your current tech stack anyways, your CRM, your DMS, your whatever. You have that unique information already, and you can be doing a lot of stuff with it with GPT as it is. You can take that data, throw it into there, as my friend Nick Askew said the other day on Space Auto, throw the information into there and draw back inferences that you can make on how to sell cars in the upcoming quarters. but there's just a litany of different things that you could be utilizing. But the difference is going to be those that adopt it early are going to be much more advanced in how to use all these things. And if they've picked the right horse, man, they're going to be way more advanced than everybody.
Is there any perhaps advice to dealers to ensure that this is serving as a supplement, not a replacement in any given area? Is it having that initial thought of, okay, here's how we're going to use this to keep staff and efficiency? How are you kind of ensuring that stays what it is? And okay, where we are as we grow with the technology that's evolving day to day, reminding people that this is a supplement, not a replacement for services.
Fundamentally, I think it's going to come down to each and every organization making that decision. And ultimately, there will be organizations that are going to take the AI and look at it and say, this is how I can replace people. And if that's what your decision is going to be, that's what your decision is going to be. And I can't stop you. But all I can tell you is that I would ask you to maybe look at it from a different light first. Just ask yourself, how can AI advance my current setup? And then adopting AI, how will that afford me to retool people that I maybe would have gotten rid of, that now it can be retooled into jobs that weren't there because AI wasn't involved. So don't be quick to fire because you have the AI. Adopt the AI, see how you can have it grow, and then see how you can repurpose people that have less purpose because of AI into a new role that's there because of AI. I know I said AI a lot in that one, but I mean, it's just, if that makes any sense.
No, it's the purpose of the segment, Michael. That's why we're here to chat about it. As far as that final pitch to even dealers of all sizes that may not be using it, what is that? If someone approaches you and says, hey, listen, you're using AI, I'm still skeptical about this whole thing. What is your message to them?
Don tells a wonderful story about a dealer back in the early 2000s and with internet, and the dealer came to him and said, Don, you got to stop the internet. And as he said then, I'll say now, I mean, you can't stop what's going to happen with AI. It's here. The genie is out of the bottle and you can't put it back in. So if your mindset is to be fearful of it, that's fine. That's probably a good mindset to have. But replace that fear with knowledge, as you should in any facet of your life. So if you have fear of AI right now, it's because you're not knowledgeable enough on it. Learn more about it. Become a student of AI, and the fear will be erased and it'll be replaced with an advancement to your business.
Well, thank you for joining us for this segment, which is part of a special series for VADA Live on AI. Michael, big thank you to you for sharing just experience, perspective of your dealership. So, is your dealership using AI? If so, we do want to hear from you at VADA Live to share your experience. You can email me directly, and we have that up on the screen. Thank you for watching. I'm Dan Carrigan, and we'll see you next time.